Hello guys, welcome back. In this video we'll quickly talk about Hasura and I'll show you how you can quickly get started. So Hasura is a solution that helps you expose your database as a GraphQL endpoint, allow for mutations and provide different features like authorization and caching, build your own GraphQL and REST APIs as well from within Hasura. It's open source, you're not locked into any contract. If we look at the design, Hasura sits in between your client and the database. It writes its own optimized SQL queries to access the data that you request as a GraphQL query, and then sends you a response in a JSON format. We'll most likely end up seeing how that works today, and it supports like most of the commonly used databases, including the ones like Oracle and PostgreSQL, which is open source. You could build REST endpoints, you could build GraphQL. If you want to quickly get started, you go into products and go to products. So you've got the community edition, which is what we'll be using. There's Hasura Cloud, which I'll also show you. I've set up a project as well, so this is what the Hasura Cloud looks like. So, and the enterprise, which we won't talk about today. So let's see how we can spin it up. Because I've already set up the cloud project, I can show you what it looks like on the cloud first. So this is their login page. You just click GitHub if you've got a GitHub account, or you can sign up with Google. So I'll show you what it looks like when you go through GitHub. The first time it'll ask you to give permission to personal information, which is read-only access to email. I've already done that, so it takes you to this page here, and it gives you the GraphQL endpoint address. You can launch console, and it brings up a console like this, and you can start writing your own queries. This connects to your, if I go into data, so it wants me to connect to a database, and the cloud version sets up your own Heroku. You can set up your own Heroku database. I can create database, and it will pop up with this Heroku login, and you log in and you set up your own Heroku logon basically. So we'll see how we can set this up locally. I'm going to close the cloud one, so you can look at your billing, all the other tutorials, docs, help and support, and your projects. You can go into the project itself, and that's a GraphQL API endpoint. I'll have to make a post to this, so this might not work. So see how it says path dollar resource does not exist, because I have to make a post request to it, which you can see over here. It's a post endpoint, and you have to send the content type and your admin secret. This is your graphical client. You can start writing your queries, but before that you'll have to set up your data. So let's spin it up locally using their documentation. Let's see how easy or difficult it is. Back to Hasura.io, products, go to products, Hasura community. I'm going to go to getting started. I'm going to use Docker. So let's see if we've got Docker. If you want to get started, there's nothing in here. If I do a ls -a, there's nothing in there. I'm going to download the Docker Compose file. So let's see if we've got Docker version. There you go. So we've got Docker. So let's go to step this one. So I'm just going to grab that and download this file, ls cat. So I'm just going to do a vim docker compose YAML. So what this will do is it's going to set up a Postgres container with all that information, and a GraphQL container with all this information, and There's some environment variables that you can pass for your admin secret and whatnot, and there's going to be a persistent volume for DB data, which Postgres is going to use too. So Postgres is going to use the persistent volume. So this looks fine. I will run a few variations of this. Hopefully I'll run one accessing the host system as well. I think I've got everything. So if I now do docker compose up -d, it'll run the containers in detached mode. This should be it, but what you need to know is I didn't have Docker and Docker Compose. You will have to download Docker and Docker Compose. I'm going to put some links in the description on how you can do that on Linux. I'm running Fedora, so but the documentation sort of covers most of the operating systems like Mac and Windows and whatnot, so you should be alright. I'm just going to press enter. It's creating the volume. Alright, so it's created the temp Postgres 1 and temp GraphQL Engine. So if I do a docker ps and make it a bit smaller, so we've got two containers, they're both running on Postgres. It's downloaded Postgres 12 and that's GraphQL 2.1. Both started 10 seconds ago. Alright, so let's try and get to, so what port can I access? 8080. Okay, so let's try and go to localhost 8080. It redirects me to /console, and there it is. So close that, hide for now. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the database, and display name of the database is container, Postgres container. That's fine. That's the database URL. I'm gonna connect to the database. So it looks like that was added successfully. So I don't have a schema. I've got nothing. It's a blank database. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some tables and whatnot. So I'm gonna go create table. I'm gonna add a person table. Alright, so I've gone into add a new table, and I've added a table called person. I've added 4 columns. ID is going to be unique, and everything else cannot be nullable except for the phone number. I've made text for phone number, which is probably arguable. Primary key is the ID, and I don't have any foreign key constraints because there's no other table. I'm going to go ahead and add that table. So I've added another table. I've called it pet. It's got an ID which is also an auto increment and has to be unique. I've got name, owner ID, and type. Type can be nullable, so it can be dog or cat or whatever. I'll just make it required. Primary key again is ID. It belongs, so owner ID connects to person ID, which is a foreign key relationship. So this table pet is going to have a foreign key relationship with the person table, and the relationship is on the owner ID field in pet to ID field in person. And I've set to cascade any changes, so if any deletes of a person will delete all of their pets basically. So I'm going to save that and add table. So I'm going to put some preliminary data in. So the way you can do that is go to person, insert row, so we've got 2 people, so I'm going to go to pet and add a couple of pets. Alright, so if I go to person and I can look at there's 2 rows 1 and 2, and then there's 2 rows 1 and 2 with owner 1 and 2. Okay, so as you can see now we've got the person table and pet, and we've got some relationship. I want a person. I want their ID, name, and age. I don't care about the phone number, so that's good enough. I want I'll show you the limiting and others later. So I'm just going to run this. So it's returning me 2 persons. So, but now if I say where ID equals 1, so you could also type it in. I'm just using this at the moment, but you can also type this in. So it only shows 1. I could do this 2, and it'll show Peter. Now that's good. That's my first query. I'm going to clear everything. I'm going to go to pet. So if I go back to data, person, go to relationships. Okay, it just says suggested, so it's not actually created. Okay, I'm going to call it pets. That's fine. Now go back to pet, relationships. Okay, so it's under suggested. So I'm just gonna, instead of calling it persons, I'll call it owner. Good. Now if I go back to the API, now there should be an owner relationship. So I'm gonna start over. So I want to find pet, and I want to get its ID and name and their owner information, basically their name and age, right? And I can run this, and you can see what it. So that's data, and it's giving me each pet, its ID, its name, and its owner. Ideally, if I have to get this, I'll have to do a join in SQL, or I have to get the owner ID of each pet and use that in a different REST call to get the information about the owner. But with this, you can really see how powerful this can be. So that's how you can very quickly just get started with Hasura. Now I'm gonna go and try and connect this to a proper database that I usually use. Instead of just using a new database, we can connect it to the existing one. I'm gonna make some changes to the Docker Compose, so we'll do a quick cleanup. So I'm gonna close all of this. Alright, so I'm here. So if I do a Docker PS, that's still running. So I'm gonna do Docker stop underscore Postgres. So that's gonna stop these containers. Okay, so it stopped them. If I do Docker PS, there's nothing running. If I do Docker image, okay, so it's got all these containers that I've downloaded and used. I'm gonna quickly create a new Docker file. So we've got this one here, Vim. So what I need is services GraphQL Engine, and that's the image that I'm after. Okay, so if we go to this particular file, if we just put that in the browser, it tells you what version is the Hasura image. I'm going to use 10 because that's what I have downloaded. I don't want to download this new image yet. I could do port forwarding, but I'm just going to use the host network. So I'm going to create a env file which has all the environment variables, and call it hasura.env. I'm going to create this file in a moment. Oops, env. And I'm going to make network mode host. So it's going to use the host port, because I want to use this engine to connect to my local Postgres. So I'm going to cat Docker Compose YAML. So that looks good. Now I need to show you to install the Hasura CLI. So if you run this command, which is that's the URL, I'll put that in a repo and add the link to it. So maybe version. There you go. Okay, that's the version of Hasura CLI I'm running. You can also install it using npm. If you're a JavaScript based developer, you can use npm to install it. So there we go. Now I'm gonna do a Hasura, so I'm gonna do an ls before then. So I've got 2 files, nothing else. I'm gonna do Hasura init. It's going to create a bunch of files. Name of the project directory is Hasura temp. Alright, let's see what I've done. So it's created this Hasura temp plus. Okay, so I did something wrong there. So I'm gonna do Hasura init. Just gonna delete it. Hasura init dot ls. Okay, so basically the dot means use the current directory. It wanted me to enter a path, and that's good enough. So I'm gonna also create a I'm just gonna touch it for now. Hasura.env ls. Okay, there we go. So we gotta tell this image that we've created in this file to connect to a Hasura database. It's gonna be running on host port, which is my machine, port number 8080. So let's see. Okay, so I've gone ahead and entered the following things in the Hasura env. So that's for metadata URL. I've created a new database called Hasura, and I've created another database for that Hasura can use to do the queries. I've turned off the console. You might be wondering how I'll be accessing the console. I'll show you how you can do that using the Hasura CLI in a moment. Dev mode just enables logging, verbose logging, and I've mentioned what types of logs I want to include, and then the Hasura admin secret. So cat hasura.env. So that's what I've got in there, and I've got docker compose YAML. So if I do docker compose up -d, okay, I'll run it. So seems like it's gone through fine. If you get errors here, that means it can't connect to either the metadata database or the actual database that Hasura is going to use. Usually it's problem with permissions, and like if you're using schemas, the user should have access to the schema. So we'll have the streaming log here, so that's going to be there. Localhost 8080, but I can't seem to get to the console. Part of the reason for that is because I've said in my config, I said enable console equals false, which is fine. So if I go back here now, Hasura console. Okay, so I haven't set up the config.yaml. So I've got so basically what this is telling me is I'm trying to access something, but I don't have the access key supplied. So I need to create a file called config.yaml. Do I have that? So config.yaml. Okay, so it's created a config.yaml. I need the admin secret to go here. So I could enter it in any of these lines. So I'll do it under. So I'll do it here. I'm just gonna put admin secret. Might have to restart. Let's give it a go. See what happens. Console. Okay, there we go. So the console started on a random port. For me at the moment, it's running on that port right there. But I can show you that there is an admin secret that is being used to access this, and run this. It's going to take a while because there's hundreds of thousands of records. So it's got me all these different names I could. Alright, so I'm just going to limit the number of results to 10. Oops, 10, and run it again. It's going to be much quicker. There you go. There's 10 of those entries. I can add and remove fields as I wish, and when I'm done, I can just close that and get back to my terminal and just stop the console using Control C, and off we go. And you can see what SQL is being run when I run these queries in the log here. So I think that'll be the end of this demo. Okay, so here's what we covered in this video. We saw how to get started with Hasura, had a quick flyby look at the Hasura cloud. We went ahead and used Docker to set up local environment. We created some tables, showed how the relationships work, and ran some queries. Then we changed the Docker setup to run in host mode on the same port as on the host, and connect to the local database on the host instead of a container. I guess this will serve as a good guide for you to do whatever your use case is to do with Hasura. Do leave comments if you need me to make any more videos. Thank you.